Not strong enough yet. Well, I will be soon enough.
13 lesser-known facts about Friday the 13th franchise. It was around the year 1978 when the director Sean Cunningham was desperately looking for a hit. The idea was quite simple, a clever manipulation of some popular horror movie tropes to create something that the audience would love. A group of relatively unknown actors was cast, and a talented team of special effects experts got together. Nobody could estimate that this group would create something so magical, but when Friday the 13th was released in 1979, it became clear pretty soon that a landmark had been breached in the horror genre. It went on to be recognized as one of the finest horror slasher classics, and over the years, there have been over a dozen sequels that follow. It inspired several other horror flicks and some random ripoffs that tore into the concept, and the woods of New Jersey became a seat of some perfect horror locations. Jason Voorhees is still one of the most iconic horror villains ever, and the machete-wielding killer machine has one of the highest body counts in horror history. You probably know all about the movie and some popular sequels, but today, we bring you some of the lesser-known stuff that will give you a lot more perspective on the legendary franchise.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Halloween was a major inspiration. You might be a bit surprised with this one, especially because the stories aren't exactly similar. However, Friday the 13th screenwriter Victor Miller later went on to reveal that Halloween was the movie that got them going. Previously, the combination of Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham tried to create a knockoff version of The Bad News Bears called Here Come the Tigers. While this effort wasn't greeted with much success, they were both pretty impressed after watching Halloween. While researching the tricks of the trade to create a commercially successful film, John Carpenter's horror classic seemed to be just the right example. The only thing noticeably common might be the slasher theme, but the inspiration surely worked wonders and gifted us another gem of a horror movie to remember all these years later. The initial title wasn't Friday the 13th. As is the case with several other major hits, it was later learned that the movie started off with a very different title in mind. Victor Miller, the screenwriter, initially came up with the title called Long Night at Camp Blood, and this almost ended up being the final title. Later, Sean Cunningham came across the idea of calling it Friday the 13th, and it somehow seemed catchier than the former. It was quickly finalized and recognized as the final title even before the filming was completed, and it was a greater teaser for the audiences who were kept guessing as to what was about to come.
I couldn't let them open this place again. Could I? Not after what happened.
Betsy Palmer getting the role was a funny story. Mrs. Pamela Voorhees has to be one of the most important roles in the original Friday the 13th, and Sean Cunningham wanted to land the perfect actress for the role. The initial idea was to cast an actress who was famous and recognizable, but had a career graph looking downwards. This would mean that she wouldn't have to be paid too much, and it would help in promoting the film as well. At first, he planned to star Oscar-winning actress Shelley Winters and Estelle Parsons. The former wasn't interested, and Parsons backed out when the negotiations did not work out. Eventually, Betsy Palmer was offered the role, and Sean Cunningham happened to offer her the chance when she was desperate in need of a new car. Although she wasn't particularly fond of the script or her role, she believed that not many people would see the movie anyway, and it would help her realize her dreams. Over 40 years later, we all know how things turned out. A funny story that talks about one of the most crucial castings in a horror movie. Filming had begun before Betsy Palmer was cast. It took some time before the lead actress was finalized and the shooting was already underway. This meant that random crew members had to step in to play the mysterious killer in the earlier murder scenes. For instance, one of the special effects assistants, Tasso Stavrakis, wielded the knife during the scene when Annie gets her throat slit. However, Betsy Palmer soon took over, and irrespective of her unimpressed stance on the movie, she did put in some serious effort to slide into the role. She conjured the perfect backstory for her character, and it established a history of the killer and her hatred of sexual transgression. She imagined that Pamela had Jason out of wedlock, and even her parents disowned her after that, causing her strong aversion to the idea of people getting physically close. Previously, the killer only had her hands. Now she got the perfect personality in Betsy Palmer and her method acting. Kevin Bacon was not a star yet. Kevin Bacon might have gone on to become a major movie star, but when Friday the 13th was being made, he was nowhere close to stardom. The only reason Sean Cunningham cast him was because of his good looks. The director felt that attractive characters would draw in the audience, and this tilted the balance in his favor. The only famous person in the cast was Harry Crosby, who happened to be the son of famous singer Bing Crosby. In fact, this was another major inspiration from Halloween, which cast Jamie Lee Curtis, the daughter of Janet Leigh, who happened to be a famous personality. The fake blood used in the movie almost blinded someone. Most horror and action flicks require gallons of fake blood, and several special effects experts who had created their own formula for the same. There are two types of fake blood. Safe blood, which can be used on the face, and unsafe blood, which can be used on the body. You probably remember the scene where the character of Bill is shot with multiple arrows and one of them gets in his eyes. To make this scene look very real, Tom Savini used a formula that had a wetting agent called photo flow. This used to make the blood soak into the clothes very quickly, and it looked a bit too real for comfort. However, it was not considered safe blood, and a latex appliance was used on the face of Harry Crosby, who played the role. During filming, the blood accidentally welled up in his eyes through the latex covering, and he started to experience intense pain immediately. His vision was affected for the time being, and it required immediate medical assistance to manage the situation. Harry complained of the burning sensation caused by the chemical, and it certainly wasn't a proud moment for Tom Savini, who almost unintentionally ended up blinding the poor guy. The controversy with the snake. Using animals was not really a big deal back in the 70s, and several movies enjoyed a free run regarding the same. However, Friday the 13th found itself in some trouble because of the alleged killing of a snake in the movie. Apparently, a real snake was used for the purpose to make matters worse. It wasn't some random wild snake. The makers used a pet snake and did not inform the owner that it would be killed. Later, when the owner found out, it became a controversy and he was understandably outraged. The issue was silenced quickly with a settlement reached beyond the courts, but in today's world, such an incident would have sparked major outrage for sure. Tom Savini and his work of art. One of the best things about Friday the 13th was how flawless the practical effects looked. In this regard, credit is due for Tom Savini, who ensured that the final results were nothing short of perfection. He was hired after watching his work in George R. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and he did not disappoint with his performance. In fact, he went on to be hailed as a special effects legend, and his work on Friday the 13th fueled his reputation big time. He used the campsite to finalize a lot of the makeup effects that were used, and it was later revealed that many of the latex appliances used in the murder scenes were actually baked in the oven right at the campsite. Tom Savini had an able assistant in Tasso Stavrakis, and together they made the most of a moderate budget to create the impeccable looks in the movie. If the gruesome gore didn't seem so real, maybe the legacy of the franchise wouldn't have spawned as it did.
You for this? Hey, nice bite. You've been smoking, boy. Smoking? Don't smoke. Causes.
The story behind Kevin Bacon's death scene. The original Friday the 13th shocked the viewers with some remarkable death scenes, but the one involving Kevin Bacon, who played the role of Jack, was easily one of the most unforgettable ones. This scene shows him lying on a bed and an arrow going right through his neck coming from under the bed. As you can imagine it was quite a complicated sequence, and the special effects department had to be on their toes the whole time. It involved the actors staying in a rather uncomfortable position for hours, while the setup and the necessary makeup arrangements were in order. An arrow was plunged through a fake latex neck, and someone had to pump the fake blood with perfect timing. It took hours to get it right. In the final moments, the hose of the pump got disconnected. In order to avoid setting up everything all over again, Tom Savini's assistant blew into the hose powerfully enough to get the blood flowing. Modern horror flicks often don't encounter even 1/10 of this struggle, and yet they fall short of the standards set by such classics.
Low and up.
Critics did not find it amusing. This has been the case with several other cult classics that went on to become historically iconic movies with time, and Friday the 13th was not an exception. The film was bashed by the critics, even though fans seemed to enjoy the unabashed entertainment on offer. One of the critics was so furious with what he had seen that he wrote a scathing review, even revealing Betsy Palmer's address in this article. The goal was to ensure that all the viewers who hated the movie would send their thoughts via letters to Betsy Palmer. We don't know how many actually did that because the audience seemed to have struck the right chord with the narrative. The movie used the reverse psycho twist. Hitchcock's Psycho is among the best psychological horror movies of all time, and the shock value of its climactic scene was simply unparalleled. In this instance, the makers chose to reverse the twist, and Victor Miller actually admitted that the climactic twist did inspire the one you see here. Instead of the son in Psycho, who kills assuming the personality of his mother, it is the exact opposite in Friday the 13th, where the mother is killing taking over the personality of her dead son. The campsite is still around. The original movie was shot at Camp Nobibo Sco in New Jersey and was actually a real Boy Scouts camp. The production team actually made a sizable donation to the organization for allowing them the privilege of filming there, and the success of the movie made the campsite extremely popular. It is still functional today, and people actually enjoy their visits to this historic campsite even today. You can go and check out their official website to make some plans for your next camping trip. Don't worry, they say Jason isn't around anymore. The designing of Jason kept changing. While some other long-standing horror villains have been kept relatively consistent, Jason goes through quite a few changes along the way. The second film made him appear like a father, and the third part finally gave him his signature hockey mask, which he took from one of his victims. The sixth movie in the franchise announced him as a zombie-like character, and the disfigurements continued further in the seventh installment. A lot of actors also played the role, unlike some classics like Robert Englund for Freddy Krueger and Doug Bradley for Pinhead. Although Jason was played by multiple actors, Kane Hodder is considered to be the one who best fits Jason's status. Overall, Jason became an intimidating horror personality with the highest kill count courtesy of the non-stop slaughter in Part 7, Jason Takes Manhattan. Friday the 13th will not be forgotten anytime soon, and the legacy of Jason is something that will go down in history as one of the greatest. We hope you enjoyed the fun facts behind the filming scenes, and do let us know in the comments below about the ones that shocked you the most.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.